Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Ray the Flying Squirrel here, and I'm Mighty the Armadillo here, and we are back for the likes of the Maxi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Super Mario Advance for the Game Boy Advance. So, last time, we've essentially did manage to continue playing through the Yoshi challenge, but not only we did somehow went into World 5, as well as World 6. Now, despite the fact that we actually did manage to struggle for a little bit for the sake of the forms of World 5-2, mainly because of this very tricky platforming here and there, likely also to carry the potion around. So, apart from those aside things though, we did those two worlds no problem. Yeah, exactly, bro. So today, ladies and gentlemen, this is gonna be the true finale in terms of Super Mario Advance. Yes, exactly, because not only we can able to actually finish up everything for the sake of the forms of Yoshi challenge by going into one final world, and as of course World 7, so naturally we can able to collect not only one, but 4 remaining Yoshi's eggs. So after we're done with that stuff though, is that, do you guys even remember back in Journey Forms event last year, right? That me and Mighty did already tackle through Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3, right? Yeah, with that one specific run-through for the sake of the forms of one of those side games you play, which is of course, Mario Bros. Classic. However though, we might as well do this again, except this time on Super Mario Advance 1. So just to ensure for the fact that we'll show off every single content to know about the fact of how this particular version of the game plays out. So because of that though, although I'm pretty sure about the fact that with Mario Bros. Classic onto Super Mario Advance 1, might plays out exactly the same as the forms of the future sequels for the Super Mario Advance chronology games, and that's what appears to be about the fact that there's only like a few differences here and there, but regardless of everything else though, we'll explain more about that, and during whenever we get into the forms of the last bit, for the sake of the forms of Super Mario Advance, before we move on to Super Mario Advance 2, Super Mario World, at some point in the future. So either way though, so yeah, as you can tell about the fact that this will be a true definition of the final time to not only play as Toad, but also with Mario as well, for the sake of the forms of World 7-2. So because of that though, yeah, everything else will be pretty much accounted for at this rate. So anyway, so a few things we want to talk about is about the fact that, well, today's date, of course, is the 26th of May today, in some cases in 2024 today. And did you believe about the fact that it's been about 1 year ago since that particular disappointing live-action Disney movie remake did somehow exist, which appears to be, you know exactly what I'm talking about, The Little Mermaid. And while looking back on it now, I found this to be a pretty dull movie, and I seriously did not enjoy it. So because of that though, despite the fact that it's now available for the sake of the forms of Disney Plus already, since Journey Forms have been last year, so because of that though, I still highly doubt, I don't know if I can able to actually watch that film again, because as a result, I just cannot stand the forms of those live-action Disney movies anymore. But that's just mainly because not only is incredibly soulless, but it's also about the fact that it's getting a little bit dull, and on top of that, it's about the fact that they just really want money, aren't they? Well, especially after the events of that particular disastrous years. Well, in particularly for the sake of the forms of 2020 and 2021 and also 2022 and maybe a little bit for the sake of 2023, despite the fact that obviously that was about the fact that the later years to come will be expected to become a lot better, I'm hoping for anyway, but that's besides the point. So but regardless of everything else though, Mighty, is about the fact that there are some other things worth noting for the sake of the forms of what's to come, and that's what appears to be about the fact that, well, fundamentally speaking though, is about the fact that I've noticed there's actually this very unexpected game has been announced recently, and that's what appears to be by the forms of Cure Bears to the Rescue, and that's going to be coming in June at some point in this year, specifically, not only for the sake of the forms of the Xbox systems ranging from Xbox One and Xbox Series X/S, and also most notably is about the fact that there was also the PlayStation 4 version and the PlayStation 5 version, and of course PC Steam, and of course finally the Nintendo Switch. So no matter what though, it's about the fact that it looks like about the fact that the Nintendo Switch is still keep on getting some of these a bunch of third-party games. So we honestly don't mind about it too much, And as a matter of fact, though, is about the fact that yes, indeed, we still managed able to continue playing through Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door recently for the sake of the Phones Switch remake, and so far we've already completed Chapter 2 on our spare own time, and now we're on to the third chapter already. So it looks like I'm having a lot of fun with that particular remake, just like the Phones of how it does in the original game. So no matter what though, I still will able to say this right now, you will still able to recommend getting the Phones of Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Switch remake, and I'm sure about the fact that a lot of players out there has already done that already. So either way, and I believe the one of those Yoshi's eggs right here, you do have to able to actually ride on this particular enemy right there in order to able to actually make our way to the other side right here. And as a result, once we're able to drop the potion slightly to the right, and obviously though, that's how you're essentially gonna get that Yoshi's egg right over there. So yeah, that's all there is to it for the sake of, well, World 7-1, basically. So now we can... Oh, really? Okay, whatever. At least, thankfully, though, those hard plants will be respawned every time whenever you manage able to, let's just say, for instance, if one of those plants has already been run out, in Journey forms to this spot right here, basically, though, it's about the fact that, thankfully, though, the actual hard plants will be respawned if you manage to go back to the previous room and stuff like that. So, either way, and I'm sure enough though is about the fact that in terms of the forms of how World 7 actually plays out to be, for the sake of the forms of Yoshi challenge, as far as I'm aware, it will be extremely tough and difficult, mainly due to the forms of how the fact that, again, if you died at least once, if you managed to still in a process when it comes to collecting Yoshi's eggs, obviously though you lose all of your Yoshi's eggs, and you have to recollect them again, which means you have to do a lot of backtracking, and not to mention though, there is no way you can able to actually backtrack on certain stages, like for instance with World 7-1 for instance, that you can't go back because obviously since we ended up on a rocket, and this also means about the fact that you have to able to start all over again basically. So anyways, let's move on to the final level for the final time, and let's get into World 7-2. So this might be a little bit of a lengthy experience, just mainly because it does manage to encourage us to able to do, you know, a lot of exploration as you probably already expect. So, and fundamentally speaking, I was about the fact that this will be the final time to able to actually try to get those Yoshi's eggs until whenever we decide to do our playthrough of Super Mario Bros. Deluxe for the Game Boy Color, but that won't be for a long while, especially concerning for the fact that obviously that was about the fact that we've only got about exactly 1 month left now until Luigi's Mansion 2 HD is going to be coming out, alongside with the forms of Super Monkey Ball Banana Rumble, so exponentially we can able to catch up with not only the Super Monkey Ball series of playthroughs, but also with Luigi's Mansion trilogy of games as well. But mind you about the fact that we're still not going to be tackling through not only the 3DS remake of the original Luigi's Mansion, but also with Luigi's Mansion 2 original version, which is on the 3DS. Well, that's just mainly because no matter what though, the recording setup is a bit of a nightmare, especially concerning for the fact that we still don't have the 3DS capture card. Well, that's just mainly because we cannot afford to get one at this rate, because as far as I'm aware, these are incredibly hard to come by. So either way though, although thankfully though, if you don't manage to able to collect all of those Yoshi's eggs, and after all the checkpoint always becomes active if you go into the next room for instance, and then basically though you don't have to worry about losing all of the Yoshi's eggs in mind. So yeah, basically though is about the fact that, oh jeez, there are some more sparks here and there, and thankfully this will be the final time we're going to be seeing those sparks in this version of the game, because despite the fact that those sparks can be pretty annoying to deal with, especially how unpredictable their movements are, and at the very least though, we did accidentally die right there, but that's okay though, because obviously, as what Mighty has already said this before, the checkpoint is always active in Journey forms of one of those rooms in particular, and not to mention though is about the fact that we still haven't found one of those Yoshi's eggs just yet, but I get the strong feeling that one of those Yoshi's eggs in particular was actually beyond in this door onto the left right here, so we're just going to make sure we do need to get a lot of hearts here and there, so just in case we don't die too many times, because obviously if you did die at one point, or potentially speaking though, if you run out of all of your lives, then obviously though, it just shows you a game over screen, just like the forms of how it does it in, specifically, the Super Mario All-Stars version, because it did show us Bodo on the actual game over screen, and unlike the NES version, it just goes all like black background, where it does have like 2 continued credits. So no matter what though, it's about the fact that we still fully appreciate about the fact that at least we have unlimited amount of continues this time around, so that's sure it's something. So anyways, let's go ahead and continue things on for this point, and as far as I'm aware, one of those mushrooms in particular was actually beyond in this room right here, believe it or not. Yeah, because after all though, we do need able to climb onto more chains, and we can able to actually grab certain cherries if we wanted to, but obviously though, it's about the fact that we're able to do is the hard way if possible, because there are so many sparks that we definitely need to avoid, so... And fundamentally speaking though, mighty, is about the fact that you notice about the fact that in Journey forms have been World 7-1, that was generally the final time we can able to take on Green Bodo after all. Because after that though, well, it's pretty much we've already come towards the forms of not only the final boss, which appears to be Wart once again, and also this might be the final time we can able to fight against with the Red Bodo. Because obviously no matter what though, she's still able to hold the key, to be more specifically nearly towards the end of the level basically, so either way though, so yeah, that's essentially how we can able to expect at this point. So anyway, there are some other things worth mentioning for the sake of the forms of what's been happening recently, and that's what appears to be about the fact that, well, as far as I can gather, that basically those about the fact that recently, for those of you who lived in North America, it looks like that Kung Fu Panda 4 is about to be getting a 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray release, alongside with the standard Blu-ray version, and finally the DVD version at some point in the next few days. Specifically, 2 days left exactly, which as a result is going to be releasing at some point on May 28th. Whilst I don't know about the forms of the UK version exactly, but I'm guessing it's going to be releasing at some point in June, at least as far as I can recall that. Yeah, it could be true for that part, especially considering for the fact that obviously Americans did receive the film first before we got it. So because of that though, yeah, my guess it will be coming on during at some point in June for the UK version of that particular DVD release of Kung Fu Panda 4. So as soon as we're able to actually obtain Kung Fu Panda 4, that basically takes care of the forms of the majority of the Kung Fu Panda film collection, at least for right now. Mind you, there are some exceptions that we still need to try to get during at some point in the future, and that's what appears to be by the forms of, let's just say, a holiday special, and on top of that, the Secrets of the Furious 5, at least as far as I can gather, but either way though, that'll be a topic for a later time, so... And also, as far as I'm aware, that was a really lucky dodge for a second ago, because I almost expected to able to actually get hit by multitude of sparks, but luckily I did somehow manage to avoid the majority of them, so that's actually pretty swell. So, I believe the final Yoshi's Egg we're going to be find, or we're about to be trying to get, that's what appears to be on that familiar location, so as a result we're just able to try our best able to avoid as many of those enemies as we could, despite the fact that we occasionally get hit a couple of times, but that's okay though, because we somehow made our way towards this familiar room, and now we can able to find the final Yoshi's Egg in the whole entire challenge. So because of that though, let's place the potion right here, and that way we'll find the final Yoshi's Egg. So all we need to do now is of course complete the stage as normal, and as a result, it's a shame about the fact that we can't able to actually see the MVP results screen during the Evolves the Yoshi's Challenge, because all it gets is just about the fact that, well, you see why as soon as we're able to actually finish up everything in this whole entire game, and especially noticeable concerning for the fact that, well, you probably get the idea what I was expecting, so... But anyway, there's also another thing we want to point out as well, and that's what appears to be about the fact that I've noticed there's actually another difference I somehow found, for the sake of the forms of Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Switch remake. Like, for instance, it's about the fact that there's actually that particular coin limit has now been increased from 999 coins to 9,999 coins. Oh, is it something very similar to the forms of how it does it for modern Paper Mario games, ranging from Paper Mario Sticker Star, as well as Color Splash, and finally the Origami King, right? Well, yes, exactly. And it also kind of reminds me of a similar treatment as the forms of The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker for the likes of the, I would say the original GameCube version that basically you can only carry up to like, I don't know, 999 rupees, whilst compared to the Wii U remake, that basically does about the fact you can now carry up to 9,999 rupees. So, yeah, it feels very, cool for that circumstances, especially concerning for the fact you can now carry the insane amount of coins as you wanted to this time around. So basically it's about the fact that if we do manage to stumble across into certain badges that we haven't exactly got yet, then obviously that'll be a perfect opportunity to able to actually just to guarantee to get more coins if we somehow manage to buy some expensive badges and all that stuff though. So yeah, you probably get the idea about that. So I very appreciate with that specific another change they did somehow address for the sake of the forms of Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door Switch remake, which we fully appreciate about that. So anyways, here we go, fight against with Red Bono for the final time, because obviously that was about the fact that we've already taken care of. All of those specific Yoshi's eggs we somehow got, but it's just about the fact that we still need to able to take down the final boss in the game first. So, even though this is technically the 4th time to able to take down Wards, believe it or not, because no matter what, that was about the fact that we've only fight him one time on the NES version, whilst in the Super Mario All-Stars version that we also took him down once, and now about the fact that it's kind of cool about the fact that we can able to take on Wards twice in Journey forms within the Game Boy Advance version, because you know exactly, oh my god, what the heck is happening right there? We almost gonna get soft locked for that really unexpected key right there, but regardless of everything else though, this will be the true definition of the final time. They're able to actually just to carry the key all the way to the locked door, and that'll be about it basically. So now we can able to take on this particular Hulk door right here, so just to ensure we are still about to be preparing to able to try to attack it. So yeah, everything else checks out there basically. So anyways, there's also another thing I want to point out as well, that I'm surprised to know about the fact that apparently though, Sakurai, you know the guy who actually did made Kirby Air Ride, right? On the GameCube anyway? Well, actually, as it turns out, is about the fact that originally, though, that game was gonna able to have the addition of that, you know, with the 3rd logo before the game decides to able to start up. You know what, the majority of the GameCube games did manage to able to have this logo called, Durably, Surround Sound Audio logo, along with the Pro Logic 2. Well, basically, though, it's about the fact that one of those examples include, for the majority of some GameCube titles, ranging from Super Mario Sunshine, Mario Kart Double Dash, Mario Party 5, and also say applies with Mario Golf Toadstool Tour. And on top of that, there's also The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker, the original GameCube version, and I believe there's also another one which appears to be, I would say, Metroid Prime or something like that. Well, actually, as it turns out though, it's about the fact that in Journey forms of the actual opening sequence, that Sakurai did manage to cut out Durably Surround Sound Audio from Kirby Air Ride to avoid making players wait on the logo screen. So yeah, that seems kind of interesting to say the least, especially concerning for the fact that it feels very similar to the forms of how it does it, where if you manage to boot up Super Smash Bros. Melee on the GameCube, where basically it just shows us 2 of those specific logos, which appears to be Nintendo and HAL Laboratory, and after that, it just cuts straight to the intro. Well, so that could be, does it for the same thing for Kirby Air Ride, which is actually pretty interesting, whilst compared to the forms of how it does in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, that basically though, it does not shows us the actual game company logos, so instead it just cuts straight to the intro, which it continues that tradition until Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U, and of course, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate rolls around. So, yeah, that's actually quite interesting. So, and there we go, folks. That pretty much takes care of everything for Yoshi Challenge, and also we've beaten Wart for the fourth and the final time throughout the majority of this whole entire YouTube stuff, for the sake of the forms of our playthroughs of Super Mario Bros. 2, or in some cases Super Mario USA, for those of you who lived in Japan. I highly doubt about the fact, I don't know if it's possible we can able to tackle through Doki Doki Panic for the sake of the forms of the Famicom Disk System version, but let us know in the comments down below. But either way, so once you've gathered all of these Yoshi's eggs, specifically all 40 of them, the reward you do get is not only the perfect word text, but it's also about the fact that, well, you do realize about the fact that we somehow returned back onto the character selection screen briefly, but that's mainly because no matter what though, we can able to actually replay through Yoshi Challenge if you wanted to, but that's besides the point. But also about the fact that if we decided able to go back into the title screen, now do you guys know about the fact that if you do manage to go back to the title screen in the first place, if you manage to beat the game once, basically though is about the fact that you know about the fact that there was actually that Yoshi's egg, specifically the red Yoshi's egg, did show up in the forms of the title screen. Well, if we go all the way back for that pause menu right here, and basically though, the red Yoshi has now hatched out, so meaning about the fact that we can now see red Yoshi decides to cheer us on, so this means we fully 100% everything in Super Mario Advance, specifically Super Mario Bros. 2, aka Super Mario USA, for those of you who lived in Japan. So obviously though is about the fact that I do know for the fact that there is technically this little Mario head icon that was about to show up, but I'm guessing it's more likely based off from the score tallies you're about to be achieving. So because of that, we were originally trying to able to actually get that particular Mario's head on that particular score count, but unfortunately though, we didn't seem to able to get it. So because of that though, oh well, beggars can't be choosers. Yeah, exactly. So now we're done with the forms of Super Mario Bros. 2, in some cases Super Mario USA, for those of you who lived in Japan, and now let's go ahead and move on to the last thing we want to show off, and that's of course Mario Bros. Classic. So, and as I mentioned this before, it plays pretty similar to the forms of how it does it, for the sake of the forms of, you know, Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3, except the noticeable difference is this time, it now shows us 1983 to 2001, whilst unlike in Super Mario Advance 4, that did show us copyright 1983 all the way up to 2003. That could be also applied with Mario Luigi Superstar Saga, mind you, and unlike the forms of how it does it in Super Mario Advance 2, and as well as Super Mario Advance 3, that basically shows us copyright 1983 all the way up to 2002. Whilst technically speaking though, unlike the Japanese version of Super Mario Advance 2, that basically it did somehow shows us copyright 1983 all the way up to 2001, because technically speaking though, is about the fact that the Japanese version of Super Mario Advance 2 did somehow first came out in Japan in exactly the same year as in Super Mario Advance 1, strangely enough, whilst compared to Super Mario Advance 3, that it did came out in 2002 for everywhere else, including Japan as well. So I found it was a little bit strange to able to notice about the forms of the actual release year by year basis, as far as I'm aware. So anyways though, so yeah, as you can tell with the forms of Mario Bros. Classic running on the forms of Super Mario Advance game cartridge, basically though is about the fact, as I said before, it plays pretty much exactly the same as the forms of how it does it in Super Mario Advance 4 version, except the noticeable differences this time is that obviously though, is that the screen transition, if you go into the next stage or something like that, the actual transition is actually a lot different, because compared to the forms of how it does it on the future games for the Super Mario Advance series, that basically decides to able to fade in black, whilst compared to in this particular version of Mario Bros. Classic on Super Mario Advance 1, that basically though decides to able to go into transition with this faded white screen as you saw for a second ago, and not to mention though is about the fact that the title screen music sounds a little bit differently for compared to the forms of how it does in the future Super Mario Advance games basically. And also something's worth noting for, I believe the actual title screen music doesn't loop this time around compared to the forms of how it does it for the you know, as I said before, not only for Super Mario Advance 2, but it's also with Super Mario Advance 3, and of course, Super Mario Advance 4, and the honorable mention is, of course, Mario Luigi Superstar Saga. So either way though, And much like the forms of how it does it in Super Mario Advance 2, alongside with Super Mario Advance 3, and of course Super Mario Advance 4, including Mario Luigi Superstar Saga, there is actually the forms of the multiplayer for the sake of the forms of Mario Bros. Classic, where if you manage able to have the Game Boy Advance cable link with you, obviously though you can able to compete against each other for the sake of the forms of how, you know, how long you're trying to survive during the forms of certain stages, or even trying to get some more enemies KOs, or specifically how much points you're going to be gathering through. So it's hard for me to explain, because I know for a fact it's been about quite a few months ago actually since we've last experienced Mario Bros. Classic, ever since in Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3. So no matter what though, yeah, nothing else I can really say about it. Apart from the fact that, let's get back into the forms of that specific topic I was on about, when it comes to the forms of Care Bears to the Rescue, it's going to be on its way onto, you know, multiple systems, for the likes of not only PlayStation 4, as well as PlayStation 5, Xbox systems like Xbox One, Xbox Series X/S, even PC Steam, and of course the Nintendo Switch. And no matter what though, the actual specific, key features they somehow mentioned for that particular game in mind, that basically they'll bring in 7 playable characters and 5 divisive worlds, and of course 30 colorful levels throughout various mini games, and localized in 7 languages, and you can able to play up to 4 players in local co-op mode. So yeah, that's all I can really say about it. And not to mention though is about the fact that, well, obviously as I said before, it's going to be releasing at some point in this year. So because of that though, we're not exactly sure when, but much like the forms of how it does it for both of those My Little Pony games on the Nintendo Switch, I don't think it's possible for us to able to actually get that game either. Well, that's just mainly because no matter what though, we still have no idea what Nintendo's up for next. For the sake of the forms of the final batch of these Nintendo Switch games was expected to be announced at some point during the forms of in June, as I said before. So relatively speaking, we shall wait and see what happens. And of course, much like the forms of how it does it in Super Mario Bros. 2, in some cases Super Mario USA, for those of you who lived in Japan, that are obviously though you can able to actually perform a supercharged jump, so that way you can able to reach higher places, specifically with that power block from above. Although unfortunately though, we've somehow wasted all of our power blocks usage, but that's just mainly because, well, as a matter of fact, for whatever reason, our controller is a bit messed up, so as a result, there might be a chance for that specific input delay. So no matter what though, beggars can't be choosers, I guess. So hopefully we'll try to fix that at some point. Well, let's just say at some point on the 7th month of the year, which is of course, July, because as far as I'm aware, that basically though is about the fact that Tiana still needs to go back onto Princess Peach Showtime, and in fact, no matter what though, she's actually almost getting very close towards the end of that game basically, before we move on to the next few Let's Plays we are about to be able to consider doing. But we'll have to wait and see what happens, and during that some point in the next couple of weeks, or days, and you name it. So, but yeah, that's as far as we can able to mention about this, basically. I mean, we would have liked able to explain something else for that matter, but obviously though, that's as far as we can able to say about the forms of the majority of, not only for certain topics, but it's also about the fact that, well, as far as I'm aware, that pretty much summed up as the forms of Super Mario Advance for the Game Boy Advance. And let's get this out of the way for the sake of the forms of our final thoughts of this particular version of the game of Super Mario Bros. 2, or in some cases Super Mario USA, for those of you who lived in Japan, as I say this so many times already. I will say though, is about the fact that after experiencing this version of the game, I was very, you know, pretty surprised about the fact that how this version actually plays out to be. I mean, sure, it does have some issues for sure, like for instance, the screen crunch resolution didn't seem to help so many times, for certain stages anyway, but I will say it's about the fact that I do really enjoy this particular version of the game still, especially concerning for the fact that it does have ourselves some extra content that was not found in Journey forms of not only on the NES version, but also on the Super Mario All-Stars version here and there. Like, for instance, is about the fact that I love the introduction to a brand new boss fight was actually exclusive to the Game Boy Advance remake. That's of course Robo Bodo, and on top of that, I love how the fact that not only Mario, Luigi, and Peach and Toad did have their own unique voice clips, but it's also with certain boss fights as well. So yeah, that's actually very interesting. Although sure about the fact that the graphics in this version of the game is a bit washed out, but I will admit it though right away, it does manage to able to hold up very well, especially concerning for the fact that this is technically the first ever Mario game to be released on the Game Boy Advance, because obviously though that was a launch title for the Game Boy Advance basically. So because of that though, yeah, everything else checks out there. I will say the music is not too shabby, it's just about the fact that sometimes that with Game Boy Advance music and sound chip wasn't exactly the best, but regardless of everything else though, it's about the fact that it sounds really dang good. So, and on top of all that stuff though, is about the fact that I love the actual addition about the fact that when it comes to likely having ourselves the second playthrough, which involves around, you know, as I stated before, collecting Yoshi eggs for the sake of the Yoshi challenge, which does able to give us a lot of replayability. And on top of that, with the forms of ace coins you're going to be able to try to find is actually quite a challenging task. But regardless of everything else though, I do enjoy this kind of challenge, similar to the forms of how it does it for when you're trying to obtain star coins and all that stuff, and that could be also applies with the dinosaur coins. Oh, don't even bring that up, because as far as I'm aware, we'll get to more details about that if we get into the forms of the Game Boy Advance version of Super Mario World, specifically Super Mario Advance 2. So because of that though, you shall wait and see what happens. So, but yeah, as far as recommendation goes, well, obviously it's about the fact that I can still able to recommend, you know, Super Mario Advance 1. In fact, it's actually currently still available, thanks to the forms of the Nintendo Switch Online Expansion Pack. However, unfortunately though, it's kind of unfortunate that you can no longer get this game on the Nintendo Wii U Virtual Console version, because as far as I'm aware, the Nintendo eShop for the Wii U is, you know, dead, obviously. And on top of all that stuff though, is about the fact that I was able to actually just to recommend getting the cartridge version too. But here's the thing though, every nowadays is that Game Boy Advance cartridges seems to get a lot of like fake versions these days, especially concerning for the fact that you obviously have to watch out for able to encounter the reproduction cartridge version of the game, or even fake versions for that matter, because if you accidentally manage to get the fake cartridge version, obviously though you can't able to save your progress, first of all, and second is that it's so pretty much a pain to able to not only get it onto the Game Boy Advance itself, but it's also trying to get out of it. So because of that though, which I do remember back in the day, I'm sure that Sonic did somehow tell me something actually, that at one time we did somehow have ourselves the fake cartridge version of Super Mario, let's just say Sonic Advance 3 for instance, and my goodness, that we are very heartbroken when it comes to likely, you know, obtain that game back in 2008 in sometime in Christmas actually, and basically though it's about the fact that we are pretty much upset about the fact that we do realize we've somehow encountered the fake cartridge version of the game of Sonic Advance 3. Like for instance, won't be able to save our progress, and on top of all that stuff though, the actual shape of the cartridge itself feels a bit off, and even with the color itself too, and not to mention though, Ray, and that's what appears to be the logo itself for the Nintendo, just feels a bit off as well, and that could be also applies with the Game Boy Advance logo too. So yeah, that's the end of story for that, and especially concerning for the fact that, well, you're probably still able to try to go after the genuine cartridges, because obviously though it works for the best. So either way though, yeah, that's as far as we can able to talk about in terms of the forms of Super Mario Advance. And there goes our another game over in Mario Bros. Oh wait a minute, we have one extra life left. Okay, I was not expecting that. But of course, if you somehow realize if you get off that specific tiny platform, then you don't have the invincibility frames with you. So either way, yeah, nothing else I can really say about Mario Bros. Classic on Super Mario Advance 1. I mean, sure, it plays exactly the same. So we on to phase 15. So yeah, it's actually a pretty good run, I guess. So with that being said, folks, is that pretty much does it for Super Mario Advance. So this is me, Ray the Flying Squirrel, and Mighty the Armadillo here. And as a result, next up in terms of the forms of some Mario game Let's Plays, as far as I'm aware, next up we're about to be doing Super Mario Advance 2, Super Mario Mario World. Or if not, then obviously though there might be some more surprises here and there. But then again though, you'll have to wait and see what happens. So because of that though, despite the fact that we're still on May after all, so as a result, yeah, I hope you guys do enjoy this particular playthrough, because we sure enough we did, despite its flaws, but hey, so I hope you guys do enjoy it, so I'll see you guys then. Bye.